The rusted iron key burned cold against Hannah Cole's palm as she stood alone in the Montana highlands, snow swallowing her boots one slow inch at a time. The structure in front of her didn't look like a house. It looked like a mistake. A concrete slab jutted from the mountainside, half buried, silent, waiting. The kind of place people forgot on purpose. She'd bought it years ago for almost nothing. A joke purchase, a future escape. Now it was all she had left. The wind tore through her threadbare jacket, stealing warmth she couldn't afford to lose. Her breath fractured into white ghosts. And beside her stood Rex, a retired German shepherd, canine scarred, limping, alert, not afraid, watching the hill like it remembered something she didn't. Behind them, the engine of her old SUV ticked as it cooled. No job, no city, no plan. Just a woman the world had discarded, and a dog who had already given everything. She didn't know it yet. But what waited beneath that mountain would change their lives forever. Before we begin, take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from today. Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Winter arrived early in Seattle, the kind of winter that didn't announce itself with snow, but with rain that never stopped, and a cold that seeped into bones through concrete and glass. Gray clouds pressed low over the city, swallowing the skyline, turning mornings into evenings before noon. It was the kind of weather that made people walk faster, speak less, and avoid eye contact, as if survival itself required silence. Hannah Cole lost her job on a Tuesday. She was 34 years old, 5'7", lean without being fragile, with shoulders shaped by years of lifting crates and standing too long on warehouse floors. Her brown hair was usually pulled into a low, practical knot at the nape of her neck, less a style choice than a habit born of efficiency. She had sharp eyes, the kind that noticed systems breaking before alarms went off, and a mouth that had learned to stay quiet even when something wasn't fair. Hannah worked as a logistics floor supervisor, a job she'd built her identity around. She was good at it, methodical, reliable, uncomplaining. When others panicked, she organized. When machines failed, she improvised. But being good hadn't mattered when the company announced restructuring. The manager delivering the news didn't meet her eyes. Budget cuts, nothing personal. HR would email the paperwork. Just like that, the badge around her neck stopped meaning anything. By Friday, the rain felt heavier. By Sunday, the math stopped working. Seattle rent didn't care that she'd been loyal. The bank didn't care that she hadn't taken a sick day in 3 years. And the city that once felt full of opportunity now felt crowded with closed doors. So Hannah packed what she could fit into her aging SUV and left before winter deepened its grip. She didn't tell anyone she was going to Pine Ridge, Montana, not because it was a secret, but because saying it out loud would have made it real. The cabin waited exactly where it always had. Hidden among tall pines, half swallowed by land that didn't care about ownership, the structure looked more like a memory than a home. It was a small wooden cabin bought years earlier during a brief moment of optimism when Hannah still believed burnout could be cured by vacations. She'd purchased it cheap at a county auction. As is. No guarantees. A future escape. A place to breathe. She hadn't planned on needing it to survive. The cabin sagged slightly on its foundation, its porch warped by years of freeze and thaw. The roof was intact but tired. Windows clouded by dust and neglect reflected the forest back at itself. Hannah turned off the engine and sat there longer than necessary. The silence pressed in immediately, thick, unfamiliar, complete. And then she felt movement beside her. Rex shifted in the passenger seat. He was a German shepherd, large even by the breed's standards, with a broad chest and powerful shoulders softened by age. His coat was a classic black and tan, but silver threaded heavily through his muzzle and along his spine. His left hind leg never bent quite right, the result of an old service injury that ended his career early. Rex was 9 years old. His amber eyes were alert, intelligent, always watching not just the world, but Hannah herself. He moved carefully now, conserving energy, but his posture still carried discipline, the kind drilled into him over years of canine service. He had been trained to search, to track, to protect, and when he could no longer run full speed, he had been quietly retired. Hannah opened the door and stepped into the cold. Rex followed, slower but steady, his paws crunching lightly against frozen dirt. "This is it," she murmured. Rex did not wag his tail. He scanned the tree line instead. The cabin smelled like dust and pine sap when Hannah pushed the door open. Cold air spilled inside, carrying the scent of old wood and thyme. She set her bag down, shoulders slumping for the first time in days. This wasn't failure, she told herself. It was temporary. She could stay through winter. Fix things. Think. Rex moved through the space methodically, nose low, checking corners, pausing at the back wall where a small iron stove sat unused. He circled once, then twice, before lying down near the door positioned to watch both Hannah and the outside world, always guarding, even now. Hannah sank onto a chair and rubbed her face. That's when the memory came, uninvited. The K-9 retirement center smelled like disinfectant and resignation. Metal kennels lined the walls. Some dogs barked. Others didn't bother. Rex had been sitting, not lying down, not pacing, just sitting, watching. The handler had shrugged. Good dog, smart, loyal, but the leg's not what it used to be. Most people want puppies. Hannah remembered kneeling in front of the kennel, noticing the scars along Rex's flank, the way his ears twitched at every sound. How old? She asked. 9. No one had applied for him. She hadn't planned on getting a dog that day. She'd walked out with Rex instead. The first night passed quietly. Wind moved through the trees like something breathing. Snow threatened but held off. Hannah lay awake on the narrow bed, listening. Rex slept near the door, or at least she thought he did. Sometime near dawn she heard it. A low sound, not a bark, not a growl, something in between. She sat up. Rex was standing. His body was rigid, head lifted, ears forward locked on something outside. His gaze wasn't toward the road or the forest ahead, but toward the hill behind the cabin. The land sloped upward there, cluttered with rocks and brush, the kind of terrain most people ignored. Rex didn't. He took a step forward, then another, weight shifting carefully onto his injured leg. A soft rumble vibrated in his chest. "What is it?" Hannah whispered. Rex didn't look at her. He was listening, sniffing, remembering. Hannah wrapped her jacket tighter and moved to the window. There was nothing she could see, just trees, snow, darkness. Still, Rex didn't relax. And for the first time since arriving, Hannah felt it too. A sensation she couldn't name. Not fear, expectation. Morning arrived without ceremony. The sky over Pine Ridge was a pale, exhausted blue, the kind that promised cold but not snow, and the forest held its breath as if waiting to see what Hannah would do next. Frost glazed the ground in thin, fragile patterns that shattered underfoot. Hannah zipped her jacket, clipped the worn leash to Rex's collar, and stepped outside. She told herself this was just a walk movement to shake the stiffness from her legs, routine to keep the hours from stretching too long. Rex stood at her side, tall and steady, the disciplined stillness of a working dog never fully leaving him. His coat caught the light, silver threading his muzzle, his eyes sharp and awake. He leaned forward, eager but controlled, as if the day had already begun without her. They followed a narrow path behind the cabin, one Hannah hadn't noticed the day before. It wound upward through scrub and rock, a slope most people would ignore. Rex's pace slowed as they climbed. He lowered his head, nostrils flaring, breath deep and deliberate. Hannah felt the change before she understood it, the leash tightening, the dog's body angling away from the trail and toward the hill itself. He stopped. Then he pulled. Once, twice. Not frantic, just certain. "Easy," Hannah said, though she followed. The ground there was uneven, stitched together by dead leaves and old snow. Vines crawled across a patch of exposed stone, their brittle stems crackling when Rex pressed forward. He sniffed, circled, then scraped at the ground with one careful paw. The sound was small but insistent. Hannah crouched, brushing aside leaves, then snow, then more leaves. Metal flashed beneath the dirt, dull, rusted, unmistakable. A straight edge where there shouldn't have been one. She cleared more with her gloves, a corner, then a hinge. A steel door lay half buried in the hillside, its surface scarred by age and weather, vines clinging to it as if trying to pull it back into the earth. Snow had drifted against its lower edge, sealing it in place. It wasn't large, no more than 6 feet tall, but it was thick, built with intention. A recessed handle sat flush against the metal. Above it, a faint seam marked where the door met the frame. Rex stood squarely in front of it, shoulders blocking the space as if on command. He sniffed again, deeper this time, then pawed at the snow, pushing it aside with careful precision. When Hannah reached out, he shifted, not aggressive, just firm positioning himself between her and the door. The message was clear. This mattered. Hannah's chest tightened. A line from the purchase document surfaced in her mind, the memory unhelpful until suddenly it wasn't. Includes underground storage structure, sold as is. She'd skimmed it years ago, filed it under useless legal language, the kind meant to cover someone else's liability. She hadn't imagined this. She knelt, fingers tracing the cold edge of the door, and felt a strange, humming awareness settle in her bones. Not fear, not excitement. Recognition, perhaps, the sense that something long hidden had decided to be found. Rex let out a low sound, almost a whine, and then dug again, faster now, snow spraying in small arcs. He worked with the patience of training, not panic, clearing the base of the door until the lower hinge was visible. Then he stopped and looked at her, eyes bright, waiting. "Okay," Hannah said softly. "Okay." She didn't open it. Not yet. The sound of footsteps on frozen ground pulled her attention away. A voice followed light, curious, unafraid. "Hey, you found it." Hannah turned. A girl stood a short distance down the slope, no older than 10, bundled in a puffy jacket 2 sizes too big. Her hair was a tangle of dark curls escaping a knit hat, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold. She held a stick in one gloved hand and a backpack slung crookedly over one shoulder. She looked at Rex with open admiration. "That's a real K9, the girl said. "I can tell." Rex glanced at her, assessing, then returned his gaze to the door. "I'm Emily," the girl added, stepping closer but stopping when she saw Hannah's expression. Emily had the easy confidence of a child raised with space and solitude, someone used to adults, but not intimidated by them. "I live down the road, with my aunt." Hannah stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "Hannah, and this is Rex." Emily nodded solemnly. "Hi, Rex." She followed Hannah's gaze to the hillside. "Walter Boone's door," she said, like it explained everything. "Who?" Hannah asked. Emily shrugged. "The guy who used to own this place. He was quiet." She searched for the word, then shrugged again. "Not mean, just didn't like people. He lived alone forever. My aunt said he waved once, but that was before her divorce, so maybe it doesn't count." "What do you know about this?" Hannah asked. Emily shifted her weight, stick crunching against ice. "Everyone knows about it, sort of. He'd come into town once a month for supplies, same list, same time, never stayed long. And sometimes at night." She lowered her voice, leaning in, conspiratorial. "You could hear machines, like not cars, bigger. My aunt said it was probably generators." Rex's ears twitched at the word. "Did anyone ever go inside?" Hannah asked. Emily shook her head. "Nope, he didn't let people on the property. And then he died, found in his chair. Heart, they said. No family came. The county sold stuff off. Then you bought the cabin." She smiled, bright and sudden. "You're nicer." Before Hannah could respond, the crunch of heavier boots sounded from the trail. A man emerged from between the trees, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the measured confidence of someone used to uneven ground. He wore a sheriff's jacket, faded but clean, and a brimmed hat pulled low. His hair was iron gray at the temples, his face lined in a way that suggested both sun and responsibility. His eyes were observant, not unkind. "Morning," he said. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Emily straightened. "Sheriff Ellison?" Mark Ellison nodded at her, then turned to Hannah. "Mark Ellison," he said. "County Sheriff. I heard there was someone new up here and thought I'd introduce myself." He noticed the door. His mouth tightened, just a fraction. "Looks like you found Boone's storage." "You know about it?" Hannah asked. Ellison exhaled slowly. "I know enough. Years back we got calls, noise complaints, nothing we could prove. Boone wasn't breaking laws, just running equipment at odd hours. I went up a few times." His gaze flicked to the door, then to Rex. "Never went inside. He didn't invite me, and I didn't push." "What kind of equipment?" Hannah asked. Ellison shrugged. "Generators, maybe. He said it was a hobby. Prepping, he called it. Man was an engineer once, from what I heard. Smart, careful, private. Rex shifted, pawing the ground once more. Ellison watched him with interest. That dog's trained, he said. Not just manners. Purpose. K9, Hannah said. Ellison nodded. Figures. Emily edged closer to Hannah. Told you. Ellison adjusted his jacket. You planning to open it? Hannah looked at the door again, at the vines, the snow, the quiet insistence of Rex's presence. Not today, she said. Ellison seemed to approve. Good. If you do, let me know. Old structures can be unpredictable. And whatever's down there, he paused. It's yours now, legally, but sometimes history comes with complications. Emily made a face. Adults always say that. Ellison smiled despite himself. They do. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of pine and cold metal. Rex settled, sitting directly in front of the door, back straight, eyes forward, as if guarding a post he'd been assigned long ago. Hannah clipped the leash tighter in her hand. She felt the weight of the hill behind her, the quiet of the forest, the sense that something had changed simply by being seen. Thanks, she said to Ellison, for stopping by. He tipped his hat. Any time. Emily lingered, then grinned. If you need help digging, I've got a shovel, she said, hopeful. Hannah laughed, the sound surprising them both. I'll keep that in mind. They walked back toward the cabin, Rex glancing once over his shoulder, then again, until the trees swallowed the hill from view. The door remained where it was, patient, buried, waiting. Hannah waited until late afternoon, when the light thinned and the forest grew quiet again. She returned alone with Rex, carrying a small flashlight and the old metal toolbox she'd found beneath the cabin sink the night before. The box smelled of oil and rust and belonged to Walter Boone, his name etched faintly on the lid. Inside were bent nails, dried grease rags, and a jumble of keys that looked too ordinary to matter. Rex walked ahead of her this time, posture different from their morning walk-head level, tail still, eyes tracking the slope with intent. When they reached the door, he stopped and sat, perfectly centered, like a sentry. Hannah knelt and tried the recessed handle again. It didn't budge. She exhaled, then sorted through the keys one by one. The third key slid into the lock with a soft, promising resistance. She turned it slowly. Metal shifted within metal old mechanisms, waking reluctantly. The lock gave with a dull clack that sounded too loud in the quiet. The door opened inward an inch, exhaling air that smelled of cold concrete and time. Rex rose instantly. He moved through the opening without waiting for permission, nose sweeping left, then right, paws silent on the threshold. Hannah widened the door and stepped inside after him, the beam of her flashlight carving a narrow path through darkness. The entry chamber was rectangular, walls poured concrete, floor smooth but dusty, no furniture, no windows. A second door stood at the far end, smaller, plain, fitted with a simple handle. The temperature dropped several degrees the moment they crossed inside. Hannah's breath fogged. Rex paused at the corners, checking the ceiling, the seams, the floor, then circled once and returned to her side. His demeanor had changed completely. This was not curiosity. This was work. His ears tracked faint sounds she couldn't hear. He leaned forward, testing the air, then advanced to the second door and waited. The handle turned easily. Handle turned. Beyond it, the space opened into a corridor that ran straight and true, lined with conduit and pipes secured in careful brackets. Lights flickered weakly overhead, old fluorescents stuttering to life as if surprised to be asked. The hum was faint, but unmistakable. Power. Partial, but present. Rex moved ahead at a measured pace, stopping at each junction to check blind spots. He signaled with a subtle shift of his shoulders before descending a short set of stairs. Hannah followed, heart thudding, counting steps out of habit she didn't remember learning. The corridor widened into a common room, long tables bolted to the floor, a corkboard with yellowed notices pinned beneath cracked plastic, a calendar frozen on a date decades past. A kitchenette sat along one wall industrial sink, cabinets labeled in block letters, a refrigerator whose door resisted before yielding to her pull. Inside, empty shelves and the faint smell of metal. This is a place, Hannah murmured. Rex ignored the room. He had already moved on. They found sleeping quarters next. A narrow room with metal bunk frames anchored to the walls, thin mattresses wrapped in plastic gone cloudy with age. Lockers stood at the foot of each bunk, all closed. Hannah ran her hand along a frame, feeling the cold bite through her glove. The structure felt deliberate, not improvised, built to last, to be maintained, to be used. The technical rooms came after. A mechanical space housed panels labeled in neat stencils: vent, heat, power. Dials sat steady, needles resting in green arcs. A generator room beyond held a massive diesel unit, belts intact, filters clean. Someone had cared for this. Recently enough to matter. Rex slowed near the far end of the level, his gait changing. He stopped before a third door, this one different, thicker, reinforced. A keypad glowed faint red at eye level. The door bore stenciled warnings in faded yellow. Authorized access only, asset storage. Rex sat, but not relaxed. His muscles remained taut, attention locked. He sniffed the base of the door, then the seam, then pressed his shoulder lightly against the frame, as if testing for give. Hannah felt a prickle at the back of her neck. "Not today," she said, more to herself than to him. They explored the rest of the level and found a stairwell descending deeper into the hill. Rex paused at the top, eyes fixed downward. He whined, once soft, conflicted, then looked back at Hannah. She shook her head. He accepted it, settling beside her as if marking the place. They returned to the common room, and that's where Hannah found the journal. It lay inside a metal desk in what must have been an office drawers labeled forms, logs, correspondence. The journal itself was leather-bound, edges worn smooth, the pages inside filled with tight, precise handwriting. Property of Walter Boone. Private, the first page read. Hannah sank into the chair and began to read. Boone had been a defense engineer. The entries said communications, redundancy, resilience. He wrote about systems failing under stress and the necessity of backups. Then the tone shifted. An entry described a car accident on a mountain road, snow, a guardrail. 2 names repeated in the margins: his wife, his son. After that, the writing grew methodical, almost clinical. He wrote about keeping values safe, about preserving things that outlasted markets and governments. He wrote about isolation not as loneliness, but as control. Rex paced the office as Hannah read, circling the desk, pausing at the doorway, returning to the windowless wall that faced deeper into the hill. Each time she looked up, he was there watching the same unseen point. When she closed the journal, he approached and rested his chin briefly on her knee. A grounding touch, then turned back toward the stairs. "Have you been somewhere like this?" Hannah asked quietly. Rex's ears flicked. He did not answer, but he did something else. He walked to the stairwell, placed his paws on the first step, and waited. Not urging, not pulling, waiting. They descended only 1 level. The air grew cooler, denser. The lights here were brighter, newer upgrades layered atop older work. The corridor branched, doors evenly spaced, each labeled with codes rather than names. Rex moved with confidence now, checking corners without prompting, sweeping rooms with a pattern Hannah recognized from training videos she'd once watched out of idle interest. His injury slowed him, but it did not dull his purpose. They found a medical bay table, stainless and spotless, cabinets stocked with supplies sealed and labeled. A storage room held crates marked with dates spanning years. Everything was organized. Everything was accounted for. At the far end, another reinforced door blocked the corridor. No keypad this time, just a pressure plate and a manual wheel. Rex stopped short of it and backed up a step, hackles lifting slightly. He did not growl. He did not retreat. He watched. "That's enough," Hannah said, a decision settling in her chest. She had seen what she needed to see, proof of structure, proof of intent, proof that this place was not a myth or a hazard cobbled together by a recluse. It was a facility. On the way back up, Rex paused once more at the upper-level door with the keypad. He pressed his nose to the seam, inhaled, then turned his head away, as if acknowledging a boundary. Hannah took that as permission to do the same. They sealed the outer door behind them as dusk crept into the trees. The lock turned smoothly now, as if satisfied. Rex lingered a moment, then followed Hannah back toward the cabin, his posture easing with distance. Inside, Hannah set the journal on the table and stared at the wood grain, feeling the weight of what she had found settle into something steadier than fear. She did not open the reinforced door. She did not descend further. She made soup, fed Rex, and listened to the wind gather strength outside. When she lay down that night, the image of the keypad glowed behind her eyes, not as a temptation, but as a marker one she would return to when she was ready. Hannah did not sleep. She lay awake on the narrow bed in the cabin, staring at the dark ceiling beams while the wind moved through the pines outside like a warning whispered too late. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the reinforced door with the keypad, the faint red glow like a pulse under skin. Rex lay on the floor beside the bed, his body angled toward the door as always, breathing slow but not fully relaxed. When the generator deep beneath the hill cycled softly, barely audible, his ears twitched. By morning, Hannah knew she would open it. She returned to the bunker after sunrise, carrying the journal, a notebook of her own, and a steadiness she hadn't felt since before Seattle. Rex moved ahead of her with quiet certainty. He stopped at the keypad door and sat, waiting, not guarding this time, but yielding. Hannah knelt and opened Boone's journal to the pages she had marked the night before. His handwriting tightened where emotion broke through control. Numbers appeared in margins beside dates, not random, not calculations, memorials. She compared the dates to entries describing Boone's wife and son, the accident, the anniversaries he returned to again and again. Rex shifted closer, nose hovering near the keypad, then lifted his head and looked at her, eyes bright, intent. She keyed in the numbers slowly. The keypad chimed once, then again. The red glow turned green. Inside the door, heavy bolts withdrew with a precision that felt ceremonial. The door opened without resistance. Light came on automatically, cool, even deliberate, revealing a space that stole Hannah's breath. The vault was not a room so much as a chamber carved into the mountain, its ceiling arched high, its walls lined with glass cases and steel shelving. Climate panels glowed with readings. The air smelled clean, filtered. Order ruled here. Nothing was piled, nothing was rushed. Gold bars sat stacked in reinforced trays, each stamped and cataloged. Silver coins lay arranged by year and origin, their luster intact. Shelves held physical stock certificates, old paper shares with ornate borders, and embossed seals, filed by company and date. Along one wall, framed artwork hung under controlled light. Landscapes, abstracts, pieces Hannah recognized dimly from museums she'd once visited on borrowed weekends. Cabinets held bearer bonds and foreign currency euros, francs, yen sealed in protective sleeves. A central desk bore a leather-bound ledger thicker than Boone's journal. Rex entered last. He did not roam. He walked the perimeter once, nose skimming the air, then sat beside Hannah's knee. Calm, watchful, the way he used to sit at the end of a completed search. Hannah approached the desk and opened the ledger. The first page listed totals in a precise hand. Subsequent pages broke them down by category, acquisition date, storage location. She did the math without meaning to, numbers stacking until they became abstract. Hundreds of millions, maybe more. Her hands shook. This was not relief. This was weight. She backed away from the desk and sat on a bench positioned near the center, as if Boone had anticipated this moment. She pressed her palms to her thighs and breathed. Money like this didn't solve problems. It created them. It drew attention. It bent people. It asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. Rex leaned against her leg, solid and warm. They were not alone for long. Footsteps echoed from the entry corridor, careful, measured. Hannah stood, heart racing, and Rex rose with her, posture sharpening. A man appeared in the doorway, mid-40s, tall, wearing an expensive coat that didn't belong in the mountains. His hair was dark with gray at the temples, his face handsome in a practiced way, eyes quick and calculating. He smiled when he saw Hannah, then noticed Rex and adjusted his stance, keeping his hands visible. "Ms. Cole," he said. "I'm Daniel Boone, Walter's nephew." He spoke smoothly, confidence trained into every syllable. "I heard you'd been exploring." Hannah said nothing. Daniel stepped closer, gaze flicking to the cases, the ledger, the lights. Hunger tightened his expression before he smoothed it away. "My uncle was a difficult man," he continued. "Brilliant, paranoid. He didn't trust lawyers, or family." A thin smile. "That made things complicated when he passed." Rex took one step forward and stopped. His hackles did not rise. His ears did not flatten. Instead, he inhaled slow, deliberate, and then shifted his weight, angling his body subtly between Daniel and Hannah. Daniel noticed. His smile tightened again. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "Quite the opposite. I think we can help each other." He gestured at the vault. "This is a lot to handle alone. Legally, logistically, emotionally. I have resources, attorneys. We could come to an arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Hannah asked. Daniel's eyes flicked to the ledger. "You keep a portion, a generous one, enough to live comfortably. I take responsibility for the rest. We avoid misunderstandings." Rex growled, not loud, but unmistakable. A low vibration that raised the hairs along Hannah's arms. Daniel inhaled sharply. His pulse spiked. Hannah saw it in the way his throat moved, the scent that reached Rex first. "No," Hannah said. Daniel's smile fell away. "Think carefully," he said, tone hardening. "People will come asking questions. The county, the state. You don't want this to get messy." Rex stepped closer, eyes locked, breathing steady. He did not bark. He did not lunge. He waited. Daniel took a step back. "You'll hear from me," he said, and turned without another word. Hannah sealed the vault after he left. The lock slid home with finality. The green light faded to red. She stood there for a long moment, Rex pressed to her side before turning away. Back at the cabin, she sat at the table with Boone's journal open and wrote one sentence in her notebook. "Power without purpose is danger." She fed Rex, checked his leg, and listened to the wind rise again. The mountain held its secrets, for now. Snow came hard and sudden that night, the kind that erased tracks within minutes and turned sound into something muffled and distant. By morning, Pine Ridge felt cut off from the rest of the world, wrapped in white and silence. Hannah stood at the cabin window with a mug of untouched coffee, watching Rex nose through the snow near the tree line, his movement careful but purposeful. Since Daniel Boone's visit, nothing felt neutral anymore. Every sound carried weight, every shadow suggested intent. The pressure arrived in envelopes first: legal notices, certified letters, polite language sharpened to a point. Daniel Boone claimed inheritance rights, challenged the validity of the county's sale, alleged improper disclosure of assets. He moved quickly, aggressively, the way men did when they believed hesitation meant weakness. The letters spoke of court injunctions and asset freezes. Between the lines, Hannah read something else: panic. He was afraid she would act before he could stop her. She drove into town that afternoon, Rex resting in the back seat, eyes tracking every passing truck. Pine Ridge was small: one grocery, one diner, one sheriff's office that doubled as the county's unofficial meeting place. Sheriff Mark Ellison was at his desk when she arrived, sleeves rolled up, glasses perched low on his nose as he read through the stack of documents she laid in front of him. Ellison was a man shaped by years of watching people lie badly. Broad-shouldered, steady, his calm came not from optimism, but from experience. He read in silence, jaw tightening slightly. "He's bluffing," Ellison said finally. "Or at least stretching. Boone's estate was sold clean. But stretching can still hurt if you're alone." "I'm not," Hannah said, glancing at Rex. Ellison followed her gaze. "No," he agreed. "You're not." They worked together for days. Ellison contacted the county clerk, pulled records, tracked dates. Hannah returned to the bunker with purpose now, reading Boone's journals cover to cover, cross-referencing ledger entries with legal filings. That's when she found it, the final notebook. Hidden behind a false panel in the office desk, thinner than the others, its cover unmarked. The last entry was brief, written in a hand less controlled, more human. "This vault is not for the one who seeks it for power or comfort. It is for the one who needs it to rebuild, quietly, carefully, without applause. If you are reading this and your first instinct is to claim, you are not the one I intended." Hannah closed the notebook and sat back, breath leaving her in a long exhale. Boone hadn't built this as a prize. It was a test. Daniel Boone made his next move before the week ended. He arrived at the cabin just before dusk, headlights cutting through the snow, his coat immaculate despite the weather. Two men stepped out with him, lawyers by posture alone, pale and tight-lipped, hands buried in gloves that had never known work. Rex was between Hannah and the door before she could think, a low warning sound rolling from his chest. Daniel didn't smile this time. "We can still resolve this," he said, "without the courts, without complications." "You're trespassing," Hannah said. Daniel's gaze flicked to Rex. "Call him off." Rex lunged when one of the men stepped closer fast despite his injury, a wall of muscle and intent. The man stumbled back, slipping on ice, crashing hard. The second man reached into his coat, panic overriding caution. Rex took the impact meant for Hannah. The sound was sharp metal striking bone. Rex yelped once, then stood his ground, teeth bared, blood staining the snow near his shoulder. Hannah screamed his name as Ellison's truck roared into the clearing, lights flashing, siren cutting through the silence like judgment. Everything ended at once. Daniel Boone was on his knees when Ellison approached, cuffs snapping shut with finality. The lawyers backed away, pale and shaking. Hannah knelt beside Rex, hands trembling as she pressed against his wound, tears blurring the world. "He saved me," she whispered. Ellison crouched beside them, already calling for a vet. "He did his job," he said gently, "and we'll make sure it counts." Word spread fast in Pine Ridge, about the fake heir, about the attempted intimidation, about the woman who stood her ground. Neighbors brought food. Emily's aunt stopped by with blankets. Even the diner owner nodded with something like respect when Hannah walked in days later, Rex limping but alive at her side, bandaged and stubborn. The evidence was undeniable. Boone's final journal, the forged documents, the attempted coercion. Daniel Boone's case collapsed under its own weight. One evening, as Rex slept with his head on Hannah's foot, Ellison called with the final confirmation. "It's over," he said. "Legally, completely." Hannah looked around the cabin, the small space that had held her at her lowest and her strongest. She rested her hand on Rex's fur, felt his steady breathing, and knew the test had never been about money. It had been about choice. Spring arrived in Pine Ridge the way it always did, quietly at first, then all at once. Snow retreated into shadows beneath the pines, creeks swelled with meltwater, and the air carried the clean, unmistakable scent of beginnings. Hannah stood on the cabin porch in the early morning light, a legal folder tucked under her arm, Rex stretched out at her feet. His fur shone brighter now, the silver at his muzzle catching the sun, his breathing slow and easy in a way it hadn't been since before the bunker, before the fight. The ruling came down without drama. Clear title, lawful ownership, no remaining claims. Hannah read the words twice before she allowed herself to believe them. The treasure, every bar, bond, canvas, and coin, was legally hers. Not because she had fought the hardest, but because she had waited, documented, and refused to be rushed into becoming someone she didn't recognize. She didn't celebrate. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table with Rex's head resting against her knee and planned carefully, deliberately, the way she always had when resources were limited and mistakes were expensive. She sold only a small portion, enough to secure the future without poisoning it. The first checks went to medical specialists. Rex was flown comfortably, with Hannah beside him, to a veterinary surgical center in Helena, where a gray-haired surgeon named Dr. Laura Mendel took over his care. Laura was in her late 50s, tall and spare, with calm hands and eyes that had seen too many working animals discarded too early. She spoke softly to Rex, explained every step to Hannah, and treated the surgery not as a repair, but as a promise kept. The operation took hours. When Rex woke, groggy but alive, Hannah held his paw and cried into his fur without shame. Recovery was slow, but hopeful. For the first time since Hannah had known him, Rex's pain no longer defined his movement. He retired officially a month later. There was no parade, no medals, just a quiet ceremony at the Pine Ridge training field, where Sheriff Ellison shook Hannah's hand and saluted Rex, his voice rough when he thanked him for his service. Rex accepted the attention with dignified confusion, tail thumping once against the grass before he settled again at Hannah's side. The fun came next. Hannah named it the Boone Rex Foundation, not to honor wealth, but to remind herself why it existed. Its mission was narrow and intentional: support for retired K-9's medical care, training transitions, placement with families who understood what it meant to love a dog who had already given everything. She converted part of the bunker into a secure training and recovery center, leaving the vault sealed and untouched. The equipment rooms became classrooms. The medical bay became exactly what it was meant to be. Trainers came, volunteers followed. Dogs arrived, some young and frightened, others old and aching, all deserving more than they'd been given. Hannah stayed. She did not return to Seattle. Pine Ridge became her city now, the slow mornings, the shared meals, the quiet recognition that came with consistency. She rebuilt the cabin rather than replacing it, reinforcing beams, adding windows, opening the space to light. It remained modest, grounded, honest. Emily visited often. The girl had grown taller over the year, her curiosity sharpening into focus. She helped clean kennels, asked endless questions, listened closely when veterinarians explained anatomy and injury. One afternoon, while Rex dozed nearby, Emily announced she was going to be a veterinarian when she grew up. Not a dream, she clarified, but a plan. Hannah believed her. Rex healed. He ran again, not fast, not far, but freely. He learned the pleasure of sleeping without readiness, of lifting his head without scanning for threat. He took to lying on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun sink behind the hills, ears flicking at birdsong rather than alarms. On the first warm night of summer, Hannah sat beside him, the sky painted gold and violet, and felt the weight she'd carried finally loosen. She thought of the bunker beneath the hill, not as a secret, but as a lesson. Wealth could be buried, hidden, protected, but meaning had to be chosen, built day by day, like trust. Rex sighed, deep and content, his head resting against her leg. For the first time in his life, he had no assignment, and for the first time in hers, Hannah had a home. The lesson of this story is simple but not easy. In everyday life, most of us are not searching for hidden treasure beneath mountains. We are searching for stability, for dignity, for a place where we can breathe without fear. Sometimes life takes everything away before it shows us what truly matters. A job disappears, a plan fails, a door closes, and in those moments, character becomes more valuable than comfort. This story reminds us that wealth is not what saves us. Choice does. Integrity does. Loyalty does. Hannah did not win because she was lucky. She won because she refused to become greedy when fear would have justified it. Rex did not protect because he was commanded. He protected because loyalty was who he was. In our daily lives, we are given smaller versions of the same test. How we treat people when we are tired. How we act when no one is watching. How we respond when we are afraid but still have the chance to do what is right. Sometimes the real miracle is not being rescued. It is becoming someone who can rescue others. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And if this story meant something to you, consider subscribing to the channel so you do not miss the next one. May God bless you and your family. May He give strength to those who are tired, hope to those who feel lost, and peace to those who carry heavy hearts. If you believe in second chances, if you believe that goodness still matters, type Amen in the comments. Thank you for watching.